and thank you for joining the Smash stream, whether you're viewing live or if you're watching at a later time. We're looking at 9 hours of solar activity here in the 304 angstroms view. We see filamentary activity setting on the west. We see former sunspot 2744 is gaining in a little bit of magnetic complexity. We see an uptick in the X-rays with some anomalies going on in the GOES X-ray flux. Teaser. Some more views of the sun. I will show you the colored magnetogram to show you the slight increase in activity there at former sunspot 2744. Slight uptick there in field intensity. And let's do one more view here, 193 angstroms. Now we were in geomagnetic storm conditions last night, and we've just seen a big uptick in the solar wind speed. So we would not be surprised. And there is no 193 angstroms view. Okay, that's odd. Let's try 171. .7 centimeter radial flux back up to 68. And something is going on. Okay, let's just bypass that and go to the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard. Check it out, folks. I have no explanation for that. That looks like X-rays coming out of space in between the sun and the GOES. That's the GOES 15 X-ray imager, by the way. We just saw an increase in X-ray flux. You can see right at the end of the video. It gets all crackly looking. That's an indication of some X-ray flaring there. And your guess is as good as mine as to how we have this consistent line in between the sun and the GOES. So that's a new one on me, folks. And let's continue on and look at more stuff, as there's plenty to look at. Now we see major fluctuations in the solar wind speed. BZ is negative. BT is at nominal levels. We're looking at what appears to be some coronal hole connections here. And let's go back one quick moment here and look at the state of coronal holes. And it looks like the SDO site is not responding. So let's just move on here. Anyway, we see a phi angle here that's just done the coronal hole magnetic connection thing, as when we see a phi angle around 180, such as here and here. That indicates a coronal hole magnetic connection to the Earth, and that is an increase in earthquake risk. Anyway, solar wind density very low, having just ramped down in the past hour. Solar wind speed actually quite high, 642 kilometers per second. Solar wind density less than 1 proton per cubic centimeter, 0.95. Here are the locations of your planets. There's where they'll be in 7 days. Here's the locations of the stars above my head. If you want to make your own star chart, head to in-the-sky.org/skymap2. I like to draw in the ecliptic. Saturn just about to set, and Venus just rising. If you have a low horizon, go get a load of that. It's going to be great. If you're up before dawn, look to the east on the ecliptic. You should see Venus out there. Going to look at the total electron content forecast, as we saw some big striations in the GOES electron flux, which we'll get to in a moment. We're not expecting significant GPS errors here, although we see some anomalies around Antarctica, as well as around the North Pole region. However, it looks like everybody's GPSs will be working well even on the equator. Next, we'll do magnetosphere movies. as the Earth just got hit by a high-speed stream with very low density wind. So let's take a look at that. Here's the density. We'll let this play through as we do most days. And next we've got the pressure. We expect to see some pretty wild striations in this also. Thanks for joining, viewers. And thanks for taking the time to leave a comment. And welcome to the live stream. Anyway, there's the pressure. The main pressure fixated on the magnetotail. So surprising there. Actually, let's do the velocity today too, since the main uptick in the solar wind here is the velocity. We'll show you how this affects the magnetohydrodynamics if it plays. And I lack the patience to wait for that, so let's just move on to geospace ground perturbations. And you're going to see some once again due to the fluctuations in the solar wind speed and density. Here it is from the global view, I think. This is changes in the Earth B field, a result of electric current passing through the planet. And let's look at the view from the poles. You can see the obvious spirals. Yet another indication that a Birkeland current is passing through the Earth. A clearly spiral shape, especially on the Antarctican side there, the right pane. And you can see evidence of a spiral on the left plane too. I'm going to let this play through a second time. Since Birkeland currents and Hall currents and Peterson currents run the Earth's weather, it's not controlled by man, and it's not controlled by carbon dioxide. It's controlled by ionization pathways the same way everything else in the universe is. All right, let's move on. Links in the description to the whiteboard drawings here. What we're talking about is a Birkeland current coming out of the sun, getting split at the bow shock region right here into field-aligned currents. And then that current is passing through the planet. And other currents spring out of that. That is the B field that we're talking about. These other currents, these are the Hall currents. And that's how the Earth's magnetosphere works. If you look at a Birkeland current down from this perspective, you're going to see these co-rotating regions here. It's just the way it works, folks. Again, links in the description to this diagram also. Feel free to graffiti it up if you like. It'll be there for 21 days. Thanks for all of those who are supporting the channel. Been putting up exclusive content on Patreon. The tier is $1, as we're encouraging people to join. And here's the latest post. You may not see that kind of stuff if you don't become a patron. That's patron-only material, folks. Also, support the channel via other links in the description, such as the Hemp Lucid Spaced Out campaign. If you'd like some CBDs, please use our links to purchase them, as this will also help to keep these videos coming out every single day. Also, visit our cycling sponsor, theveloshop.net. It is a bike racing team. If you're a prepper and you don't have a bike in your prepping arsenal, you should get one. And Highly recommend you buy a bike from here. It comes with a free bike fit services. And Becky Quinn, 22-year pro, knows about bike fit. So buy a bike. If you don't have one, go get one. TheVeloShop.net. Again, I remind you, the Patreon tier is only $1. Thanks to you, thanks to those folks who only will donate via PayPal. We appreciate it. Every dollar counts. And thanks for those of you who've been sharing on social media, as we've gained, I think, 3 subscribers since yesterday. So that's pretty amazing. Cheers, folks. Also, check out the soundclick.com/goldencapproductions page for original music, often featured on our videos, as well as a SoundCloud page also shown in the description. Let's get back to the solar activity here. 10.7 centimeter radial flux now up to 68, well above predicted values, as cycle 25 appears to have begun. You wouldn't be surprised to see more cycle 24 sunspots, but that high latitude sunspot 2744, proper indication of cycle 25 beginning. We just saw this uptick in the X-ray flux, and that's why I was looking at the X-ray imager in the first place, and I saw that anomaly, which I showed at the beginning of the video. ACE is agreeing with Discover for the most part, an older spacecraft that's better shielded. Anyway, solar wind speed quite high now, over 600 kilometers per second. Putting us back into geomagnetic unrest conditions. As you can see, we've got, if I could stop freaking scrolling before I start smashing computers. Okay, there we go. So KP of 4, geomagnetic unrest. We see spikes in the GOES magnetometer. That's because of incoming plasma from a coronal hole wind stream. And this one was predicted, unlike last night's. Monday night's coronal mass ejection. And we see big fluctuations in the GOES electron flux here. That's as a result of incoming protons primarily, folks. If you weren't aware, the solar wind is primarily made of hydrogen nuclei, also helium nuclei, as well as electrons, and then just a whole bunch of other ionized elements, folks. We see some charging hazards here around southern Mexico and Central America and northern South America. Not a result of high electron flux. F2 layer is very discharged on the nighttime side and looking pretty normal on the daytime side. Highly discharged on the nighttime side, making for some cold nights in Antarctica. If you're viewing the videos from Antarctica, you're one of the like 5 people that overwinter there. Please leave a comment. Aurora forecasts have picked up. If you're in southern Canada, go out and look up. And if you're in Antarctica, maybe not go out and look up, because your face will freeze off your body and become a mask flying through the air. Synoptic map showing some filament setting here, no big deal. Here's a Gong 2 data. And from a magnetic perspective, regarding the heliosphere, it's going to be pretty smooth sailing here for a while, barring any new activity popping up. We anticipate remaining in the South Pole oriented portion, shown in red, for an extended period as we await additional activity. Follow us on other social media if you like, such as on Instagram, where we do stuff that's not necessarily space weather related. Here's one for you if you like the Tour de France. Today's stage. Tomorrow's Tour de France profile contains 2 third category climbs, as well as 2 second category climbs. You're welcome. So there you go. There's what's going to happen in today's tour, and it's probably getting underway right about now. Also follow us on Twitter if you find it easier to share our videos that way. Perhaps you have folks that only use Twitter as social media. Share our videos with them there and help our channel to grow. We appreciate it. Also follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/smAsho, and on Gab. Starting to use this as a Twitter alternative. Not super impressed with it yet, but I don't use it that much as I don't have time, especially during the summer. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, folks, and the channel is continuing to grow as anticipated. Check us out also on Minds, minds.com/smAsho, the open source social media that will not censor you. So make an account there, get off of Facebook for goodness sakes, and help us get to 500,000 views on Minds, minds.com/smAsho. The social media that's open source and won't censor you. So thanks again, new subscribers, for taking the time to press subscribe. Press the notification bell so you see when these live streams go up. You might even get the notification. Who knows? Looks like we have a small downtick in earthquakes here, and for that, we thank you. We did see a 5.5 at an extreme depth off the coast of Russia, north of Taiwan. Shout out if you felt that one, David Dubine. Although I doubt you did, it's pretty deep. Anyway, heads up, Taiwan, the east coast of Russia, for a larger quake at the surface, as that one's 437 kilometers deep. If that happened at the surface, that would be more like a 6.7. Here's a 5.6 in the Philippines. Looks like the largest quake of note of the past 24 hours. Here's a 4.9 at the Philippines. 4.7 at New Zealand, out in that rift zone. That one's pretty far north, out in the ocean, closer to Fiji than to New Zealand. 4.9 at the Philippines. Looks like an aftershock of that 5 plus. 5.4 in the Aleutians. Let's take a look at that one, as there are some volcanoes around the area. That one out in the ocean. Anyway, there's the location. Largest quake in that region for quite a while. We actually see quite a few small quakes, and thousands of quakes are still continuing to hit California, and this could go on for an extended period of time if you weren't aware. Here's a 4.5 in Indonesia. 4.4 in Indonesia. 4.3 at Guatemala. 5.1 at the Philippines. Another deep quake near Fiji, 521 kilometers depth. Heads up, Fijians. You could get a larger quake at the surface. Tajikistan, as Middle Eastern earthquakes continue, receiving a 4.1 at depth. So the alert does not expire there either. Here's a very shallow quake at Little Lake, California, and a magnitude of 4.0. Let's take a close-up view of that one. Now, the 7 magnitude quake was right about here in this China Lake Naval Weapons Test Range facility. Seeing lots of quakes going on in that same region. And I'm not going to conjecture or say anything silly about it. And now I've completely lost my place, undoubtedly. All right, so we see also a 4.6, 4.8 at El Salvador, that is. If I missed any, folks, just leave a comment. I apologize. It's pretty tough to get through, honestly. 4.7 in Indonesia, and no other quakes of note there. Here are the pressure maps. I did see some weather warnings. We're not going to get in depth into it, as there is still plenty of stuff to cover. And let's get prepared for the upcoming global warming. section of the video by bringing up snow depth. And let's just preface any global warming information with the fact that if you're worried about Greenland melting, well, there's 185 inches of snow there. 185 inches of snow there. What does the scale say, folks? 9 feet of snow from coast to coast. All right. Well, I was really worried about Greenland melting. Now I feel just fine. I was really, really concerned, folks. Let's look at sea ice thickness and volume. And sea ice volume is at the same level it was in 2016. And the Arctic is still frozen. Northwest Passage is probably navigable now. I believe icebreakers need less than 2 meters in order to get through there, so that's a good thing, especially for stuff like oil prices. Check out Global Cryosphere Watch to look at the Northern Hemisphere snow totals. Now, the Northern Hemisphere received record snow last year, and it received record snow this year, which is about 2 standard deviations higher than 1982 through 2012 average, as noted on the graph. Now, look at the right side of the graph. How many standard deviations is that off? See where it says July 19th? Snow mass, the little red dots there. What is that? 8 standard deviations higher than normal? That's right, folks. The snow in the Northern Hemisphere does not appear to be melting. And if you're familiar with the way glaciation works because snow falls, doesn't melt, forms into ice, more snow falls on top of it, doesn't melt, weight and pressure forms it into ice, and so on and so on. That's how glaciers form. See that? You still think the planet's warming? There's no hope for you, I think. Just kidding, folks. There's always hope. There's always hope. Volcano rundown. Krakatoa back on the list. Abico back on the list. Producing a 10,000-foot ash plume. Krakatoa exploding, producing a 9,000-foot ash plume there. Also Dacono, 7,000-foot plume there. Ruvenador exploding. So all those volcanoes exploding except Abico. And Sabancaya with explosive activity also producing a 24,000-foot ash plume. Please do not attempt to play Twister on the Sabancaya caldera. The board might melt. Tamu Massif, no longer our biggest volcano. Magnetic anomalies reveal its true nature. Links to this description from Cosmos magazine also in the description box. Links to this article in the description underneath the video. Anyway, it was declared the largest volcano in 2013, and now it turns out that, whoops, it's just part of the mid-ocean ridge system, which stretches 65,000 kilometers around the world. So that's not the world's largest volcano. Guess what is? Mauna Loa, which has just received an uptick in its warning level, by the way, folks. If you weren't aware, yeah, Mauna Loa is back on alert because we've been seeing earthquakes underneath its caldera. U.S. Doppler radar showing a convergence line heading fast over Lake Michigan right now. We're going to look at that in a moment. Check out lightningmaps.org if you hear thunder. Heads up Hastings, Nebraska. Beatrice, Nebraska, and Lincoln. It's on the way, folks. It's on the way. Batten down the hatches. Here's a water vapor map from a global perspective. Not a view that we always show. And give me 1 minute. I'm trying to read the comments here. And thanks everybody for leaving comments. We appreciate it. Let's look at a closer view here. As there are some interesting zones of convergence. We're going to play the whole image, then we're going to zoom in on a spot over, well, Nebraska. Anyway, there's the GOES water vapor map, complete with date stamps, time stamps rather. And it looks like cold jet stream air is blowing into the area for me. Man, check out that convergence. There's a sandwiching happening. Dry air converging, pancaking that moist air over Nebraska as some stuff forms in the Gulf. We're going to look at both things. First, this convergence zone over Nebraska. Remember, folks, dry air, shown in red and orange, is more massive than wet air, shown in pink and blue, and has a tendency to push the wet air around. Now, we think of low pressure systems as the phenomenon that controls the atmosphere. It's not really the way it works. The dry, cold, more massive air has a greater hand in the way things flow. And when I say things flow, I don't mean the jet stream, because the northern hemisphere barely has one these days. Let's just look at this convective zone over the Gulf of Mexico, as we're not going to step on David Schlotthauer's toes and predict any hurricanes. Anyway, there's that convective situation going on over the Gulf of Mexico. Keep in mind, the northern hemisphere low pressure systems rotate counterclockwise, and these systems aren't even able to do that because it's just convective forces out the yin-yang. And we've graduated to that is an ass and that is a hole in the ground vulgarity-free section of the video. Define a term. A lot of people think that Apple invented the
smartphone
in 2005 when the iPhone was released, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. The earliest smartphone, I believe, at least one that had a touchscreen, would be the IBM Simon, released over 10 years earlier in 1994. Links in the description to this. If you're interested in old, very outdated technology, check it out, the IBM Simon. And now I'm going back to Cali. I'm just kidding. I'm not going back to Cali. I might go back to Cali, but not in the context of making this video. I'm going back to the sun. We're skipping cosmic rays. We're skipping all kinds of stuff in the smAsho stream to get it completed. Let's look at the 48 hours of 193 angstroms view here. As we do see a coronal hole. Actually, it's kind of a series of coronal holes here south of the equator around that former sunspot region 2744. And it's about that time, folks. So thanks again for tuning in. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Please share on social media to help us gain viewership. We really appreciate you tuning in, whether you did it live and left a comment or whether you viewed later, leave a comment anyway. It helps the analytics. And we implore you to stare at the sun. Just use the proper instruments, like the SDO. And when you're staring at the sun, don't drink. And if you drink, there at the sun anyway. Just don't drive. And last but not least, since it'll never be now again, may the solar wind be at your back and the atherosclerosis absent from your veins.